got a job watching a mirror. It started showing something else. When I first read the job description, I thought it was a joke. Seeking responsible individual to monitor an antique mirror overnight. No experience necessary. Must not fall asleep. High hourly pay. Too good to be true, right? I took the job anyway. I should have asked why they needed someone to watch a mirror. Why the room had no windows. Why the mirror was bolted to the floor like it might run away. But it's too late for that now. 'Cause something is watching me back. I found the ad on a corkboard in a gas station 2 towns over. I was low on cash, stranded in a place I didn't belong. The pay caught my attention. $40 an hour for an overnight shift. 6 hours of sitting in a climate-controlled room watching a mirror. No cleaning. No phones. No guests. Just sit and report anything unusual. The number led to a landline. A woman named Margaret answered with an emotionless tone and gave me instructions. Be at the facility at 9:45 p.m. sharp. There will be a clipboard with your name on it. No questions asked. She hung up before I could respond. I should have taken that as a red flag. I arrived early, nervous but curious. The facility was on the outskirts of town, past a grove of leafless trees and a rusted iron gate that opened on its own as I approached. It looked like an abandoned asylum, but newer. Too new to be abandoned, too old to feel safe. Concrete walls. No windows. No visible security cameras. Inside, the lobby was clean and modern. A receptionist behind thick glass handed me a lanyard and pointed to a locked steel door. The clipboard with my name waited beside it. Follow the red arrows, she said. No deviations. The hallway beyond the door was silent. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the air smelled faintly of bleach and old paper. Every few feet, a red arrow pointed toward a corridor that twisted deeper into the building. I counted 13 turns before I reached the room. It was rectangular, maybe 20 feet long, with soundproof walls and a single chair bolted to the ground. The mirror sat at the far end of the room, nearly 7 feet tall, its edges carved with patterns I couldn't quite decipher. They looked like vines at first glance, but closer inspection suggested something. Alive. Worms. Tentacles. Mouths. I shook off the feeling and approached the chair. It faced the mirror directly, 10 feet away. A journal lay on a small side table next to it, along with a pen. Log anything unusual, read the note on top. Do not leave the room. Do not break line of sight with the mirror. Do not fall asleep. No pressure. At exactly 10 p.m., the overhead lights dimmed. A red digital clock lit up above the door, starting the countdown. 6 hours. The first hour was uneventful. The mirror reflected only what it should. Me, the room, and the chair. Nothing moved. Nothing shimmered. Just the faint, almost imperceptible hum of the air conditioning. By 11:15, I started to feel the weight of stillness. It was the kind of silence that presses on your ears, begging to be broken. Then, something changed. It was subtle. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, a ripple at the edge of the reflection, like a breeze stirring invisible curtains. But the air was still. I blinked. The mirror rippled again, slightly, as if the surface were liquid. My own reflection wavered and distorted, not like a funhouse mirror, but like a living thing was shifting beneath my skin. My features smoothed, then sharpened, then smoothed again, subtly wrong. I blinked again and it was normal. I scribbled in the journal. 11:19 p.m. Brief distortion in reflection. Ripple effect. Possibly due to eye strain. Will monitor. I sat up straighter. The mirror didn't move again. I watched harder. Another hour passed. Just after midnight the temperature dropped. I hadn't noticed the change until my fingertips turned cold on the pen. I exhaled and saw fog. The hum of the air conditioner was gone. But I didn't feel warm. The mirror remained still. But my reflection didn't. At first I thought I had twitched, maybe a nervous movement, an involuntary blink. But I hadn't moved. I was frozen in my chair. And yet, in the mirror, I tilted my head. Only slightly but definitely. I leapt up with a jolt, knocking over the chair. In the reflection, the other me stood calmly, still seated, watching me with a slight tilt of its head and a small, unfamiliar smile. That smile didn't belong to me. I stumbled back toward the door, reaching for the handle. The lights above flickered. When I turned back to the mirror, everything was normal again. My reflection mirrored my panicked stance. The chair was on the floor behind me. My breath fogged the glass. I picked up the journal again, hands trembling. 12:06 a.m. Saw independent movement in mirror. Reflection did not match my actions. Short-lived. Possible hallucination. Sleep deprivation. Will continue monitoring. That entry felt like a lie the moment I wrote it. I sat down again, this time cross-legged on the floor. I didn't want to be in the chair anymore. The next 30 minutes were uneventful. My reflection followed my every move again. The air was still icy, but nothing changed. Until I blinked. I blinked, and when I opened my eyes, there was someone standing behind me. I froze, staring at the mirror. It was a figure, tall, draped in something dark and wet-looking. No features. Just a void where a face should be. But when I turned around, no one was there. Back in the mirror, the figure was gone. Only my reflection remained, wide-eyed, pale, shaking. I didn't write that one down. What was the point? At 2:03 a.m. I heard the whisper. Not outside. Not inside. But, from the mirror. A dry, rasping voice curling around my name. Eli. I stood up slowly, heart pounding. My reflection stood up with me. Delayed by a full second. Backed away. Stepped closer. Not toward me. Toward the glass, like it was pushing forward, trying to cross over. Its face shifted, blurring like a digital glitch, melting and reforming. The eyes hollowed, then burned bright, then vanished again. Let me in. The voice hissed. The lights above me burst. A pop and a shower of sparks. Darkness swallowed the room. And in that perfect black I saw it. Not through the mirror. But standing beside me. Its breath on my neck. I couldn't move. Not from fear, though fear had hollowed me out. I couldn't move because something was holding me still. It wasn't touching me. Least not physically. But I felt its weight pressing down on every inch of my body. Like the air had thickened and turned to glue. Like I'd stepped into a dream where my limbs refused to obey. I forced my eyes toward the mirror. My reflection was gone. The chair was empty. The journal gone. Only the mirror remained, dark and rippling slightly like a pool of black water. Something moved beneath it. Hand. Pale, bony, clawed. It rose from the darkness like a flower blooming in reverse. The rest of it began to surface. A head, shoulders, torso, all draped in shadow. Its skin stretched thin over impossible bone. Its face wasn't a face at all. Just a mask of writhing mouths stitched shut with threads of hair. I didn't scream. Couldn't. I blinked, and it was back in the mirror. As if it had never left. As if it had never almost crossed over. The lights flickered back to life. Harsh, buzzing fluorescence. My reflection returned, sitting calmly in the chair, hands folded. A faint smile playing on its lips. Its eyes locked with mine. I stumbled back, lungs burning, and slammed my fists on the door. "Let me out!" I shouted, voice cracking. No response. I didn't expect one. Eventually I slumped to the floor. The air was heavy with something sour, like rotting wood and spoiled milk. The mirror shimmered faintly, humming like it was alive. I crawled to the journal and flipped it open. There were new entries inside. Not mine. The handwriting was jagged, frantic. 1:14 a.m. It's learning. 1:26 a.m. It knows I can see it. 1:44 a.m. Don't break eye contact. Don't blink. Don't let it think you're not watching. 1:59 a.m. It's smiling now. Not me. 2:08 a.m. I think it's already out. Maybe it always was. Maybe I'm the one inside. The last entry was just a single word. Over and over again. Run. But I couldn't run. I was locked in. Trap. When I looked back at the mirror, my reflection held up its hand and waved. I didn't. I stared, unblinking, as it stood up and walked to the edge of the mirror, pressed its palms flat against the surface. The glass didn't shatter. It rippled, like it was welcoming it through. And then, the lights went out again. This time they didn't come back. I sat in perfect blackness, listening, breathing. Not mine. Something else in the room. Something pacing. Scrape, scrape, scrape. A dragging sound. Nails against concrete. Movement just behind me. I didn't turn. I didn't breathe. The mirror flashed to life again. But the reflection wasn't mine. It was the room behind me, illuminated in cold, dead light. And in that reflection I saw it. The thing. It crawled along the walls like an insect, limbs too long, too sharp. Its head twitched as it moved, bones cracking audibly. Left no shadow, no sound. Other than that scratching, scraping. Stopped right behind me. Then it leaned close, until its reflection stared into mine. No eyes. Just skin stretched taut where eyes should have been. Its stitched mouths all puckered and trembled. And then, one of them began to smile. I screamed, finally, and turned around with a burst of adrenaline. The room was empty. Silent. Ill. But I knew better. This was its game. I backed against the far wall, as far from the mirror as I could manage. The digital clock above the door now blinked red. 3 a.m. And then everything changed. The mirror shattered. But not like glass. It didn't explode outward. It folded inward, sucking in the light, the sound, the very air. The room groaned like the walls were breathing. And through the shards I saw another place. It wasn't a reflection anymore. It was a window. And on the other side of that window was a room exactly like mine. Chair. Same walls. Same journal. Except the person in that room wasn't me. It was someone else. They looked like me, but something was off. The skin was pale like candle wax. The eyes were too black. Too still. They didn't blink. I raised my hand. Slowly. So did they. Then I lowered mine. They didn't. They just stared. And behind them, something began to move. Dozens of figures. Crawling. Twisting. Slithering. And I realized with perfect clarity. The mirror was not a mirror. It was a door. And it was opening. The wall behind the fake me cracked. From the fracture, more of those things poured out. All mouth, all bone, all nightmare. And one by one, they began pressing their faces against the glass. I backed away, heart pounding so hard it hurt. The journal shook beside me. Picked it up. The final page had changed again. This time it was in my handwriting. But I hadn't written it. You're next. The lights above sparked violently, then died. And the mirror, or what was left of it, began to pulse. It wasn't glass anymore. It was flesh. Breathing. Wheezing. Something was trying to come through. And this time, I knew it wouldn't stop at reflection. A voice hissed again. Not from the mirror. Not from the room. From inside my head. Let me wear you. I screamed. But no one heard. No one ever does in this place. Not when you're the only real thing left. And everything else is wearing your skin. The mirror, flesh, pulsing, slick with something dark, let out a wet, gurgling sound. Like something alive trying to breathe through mucus. I stumbled backward, but the room felt smaller now, as if the walls had shifted in closer without making a sound. The lights were gone for good. The only illumination came from the mirror's glow, sickly red, like blood seen through tissue. I pressed against the far wall, heart hammering, clutching the journal like it could somehow save me. But even it had changed. The pages felt damp, squishy. Ink bled through them like veins. The door, where was the door? It had vanished. The flat concrete wall where the exit once was now bore no knob, no seam. Just uninterrupted stone. Trap. I turned back to the mirror door. The figure on the other side still stood there. Me but not me. Its smile had grown. Mouth stretching past what skin should allow. Black gums. No teeth. Then, slowly, it began to tap on the inside of the mirror. Each knock vibrated through my spine like a warning. But I couldn't look away. Behind it, the crawling things had filled the entire mirror world. Bone thin, too many limbs, their bodies bent wrong. Some clicked. Others giggled in high, strangled tones. One pressed its stitched face against the mirror so hard the skin tore. The thing that looked like me finally spoke. But its mouth didn't move. The sound came from the walls around me. "You shouldn't have looked so long." Ran. Not because I thought there was somewhere to go, but because I needed to do something. I threw the journal at the mirror, screamed, begged, scratched at the walls. "Let me out. This isn't real." But it was. And worse, it was watching me enjoy it. The mirror cracked again. This time from the inside. Blood oozed from the fractures, running in slow, deliberate streams down the wall. I watched in horror as the blood formed letters. Words. "You were hired. You belong to it now. Watch or be watched." The lights above flickered once, and a new chair appeared beside mine. It hadn't been there before. It matched my own perfectly. And a moment later someone sat down in it. I stared. It was a child. It's hollow. Mouth sewn shut with fine black thread. He didn't move. Didn't blink. But his reflection in the mirror. Smile. Not the warm smile of a kid. Something ancient. Starved. I wanted to speak, to ask his name. But the moment I opened my mouth, something grabbed my tongue. Inside. From within my throat. Cold, wet finger. I choked, coughing and falling to my knees. The pressure released, and I gagged out thick black threads. Threads that were moving. They slithered away, into cracks in the floor. The boy turned his head toward me. Slowly. From the mirror his reflection spoke. "It's teaching us to behave." I looked back at the mirror, now crowded with dozens of eyes. Staring, judging, waiting. And I realized. This wasn't the first time this job existed. There were others. There had always been others. Watchers, testers, hosts. And now I was one. I grabbed the journal again. Flipped pages wildly. More writing had appeared. Times of death. At the very bottom was mine. Only the time next to it was still blank. Still waiting. The boy stood. The mirror rippled again. Then, from behind me, a new sound. A step. Not echoes. Not my imagination. Real. Coming closer. I turned around and saw something that should never have moved. The wall was peeling open. Like skin cut with a scalpel, parting slowly. And from inside stepped the reflection version of me. Except now, it was perfect. Too perfect. Skin clean. Hair tidy. Eyes full of something I no longer had. Control. It looked at me, smiled warmly. Then said, "I'll take it from here." And walked past me to the chair. Sat down. Crossed its legs. The boy didn't move. Neither did the mirror. But the instant the double sat, the lights snapped on again. And the door was back. Wide open. I stood trembling. Could run. But I already knew. That wasn't freedom. It was part of the game. I staggered toward the door anyway. Body screaming, mind unraveling. Right as I reached the threshold, I looked back. The mirror reflected two figures in the chairs. The perfect version of me. And the boy. But this time they were watching me. From the other side. My reflection turned its head slowly. And whispered, "Don't forget to watch the next one. That's your job now." Then the door slammed shut behind me. I was outside. Same building. Same hallway. But something felt wrong. The overhead lights were flickering. There were no sounds. No hums. No distant footfalls. Just absence. I walked down the corridor, my steps echoing too loud. Every mirror I passed reflected nothing. Not me. Not the hallway. Only them. The watchers. All of them. Staring back. Smiling. The silence followed me home. It clung to my clothes, curled into the corners of my apartment, and nested in my chest like a parasite. I sat in the shower for hours that night, letting the hot water scald my skin just to feel something real. But even with my eyes closed, I could still see the mirror. The cracked glass, the bleeding words, the reflection of a version of myself that had taken my place. Sleep didn't come easily. When it did, it came with visions. I dreamed of the boy, the stitched mouth, chair, mirror. But in the dream I was on the other side of it, watching. The next morning everything felt off. The sunlight had a grayish tint. My reflection in the bathroom mirror looked slightly delayed. Half a second behind, like it was thinking before mimicking me. My phone screen glitched whenever I looked into it, showing flickers of static or quick glimpses of that same narrow, windowless room. I called the agency that hired me. Disconnected. I went back to the building. It was gone. Where it had once stood was just an empty lot, overgrown with weeds and ringed by rusted chain-link fencing. As if the building had never existed. But I remembered it. I had bruises on my arms, still healing. A ripped corner of the journal I'd stuffed into my coat pocket. The dried thread I'd coughed up, now brittle in a tissue on my desk. This was real. All of it. Became obsessed. I tried to find anything online. News reports, job listings, blogs, Reddit threads. But there was nothing. No mention of the mirror, or the boy, or anyone else who'd had the same job. It was like I was the only one who remembered. Or the only one who had escaped. But had I? 1 week after I left, I noticed the first change. The mirror in my bedroom fogged up by itself. Even when I hadn't used the shower. And in the fog, someone had written a word with their finger. Watch. I scrubbed it off. That night I had another dream. This time the mirror wasn't in a room. It was floating in a black void. And beneath it, writhing and clawing at the edges, were thousands of pale, twisted bodies. Some headless. Others with too many mouths. They reached up and begged to be seen. To be watched. To be remembered. I woke up gasping. The mirror in my bedroom had cracked. A thin, hairline fracture down the middle. I covered it with a sheet the next day. But every time I passed the room, I felt a pressure behind the door. Like something was breathing behind the fabric. Waiting. I started keeping the lights on all night. Didn't matter. The next message came on my bathroom mirror. You're late. I started hearing things. Footsteps at 3 a.m. Children giggling in the hallway, though I live alone. And then the boy. He appeared in the reflections. Not in front of me. Never physically. But any time I looked into a mirror, a dark screen, even the surface of still water, there he was. Just behind me. Watching. Sometimes smiling. Sometimes not. The worst part. I was starting to get used to it. Until the night my television turned itself on. It was old. I barely used it anymore. But at exactly 3 a.m., the screen lit up. Static and black shapes twisting in the chaos. Then clarity. The feed from the mirror room. That same concrete wall. That same red glow. That same chair. But this time there were 3 people in the chairs. Boy. My double. Me. I watched in paralyzed horror as the version of myself on the screen slowly turned to look at the camera. Me. And raised one hand. Then, without moving its lips, I heard the words. You stopped watching. Now we're watching you. The screen went black. For a moment I sat there, heart in my throat. Then something shattered. In the bedroom. I ran in. The sheet had fallen off the mirror. Or been pulled. The glass was gone. Not broken. Just missing. Like a portal ripped open. And through it I could see the mirror room. No glass between us anymore. I could feel the air from that room. Cold. Smelling like mold and old blood. Then something moved inside. The boy stepped forward. Closer to the frame. Then another version of me followed. Not the one from before. This one was emaciated. Sunken. Mouth smeared in something dark. It stared at me. Whispered. You left your post. Then reached through the mirror. Its hand came through. Flesh and bone. Grabbed my wrist. It's cold. I screamed, yanked myself free, fell back hard. The hand retreated. But it left something behind. Burned into my wrist. Symbol. Black charred spiral. It itched. Then pulsed. That night, I moved every mirror out of my apartment. I smashed them all. Wrapped the pieces in blankets and dumped them miles away. But the reflection still found me. In glass windows, car windshields, my phone. Always watching. One morning I looked at my coffee and saw not my face, but a chair. Me. Waiting. That same night, I woke up sitting in a wooden chair. Back straight. Hands on knees. In the mirror room. Again. And across from me. A new person. Tied to a chair. Eyes wide. Panic. Wetting. Staring at the mirror. And reflected beside them. Me. Smiling. Just like before. The red light hummed. The walls pulsed. And deep within the mirror, something laughed. Something older than time. The voice returned inside my head louder this time. You're not the watcher anymore. You're the watched. Then I woke up in my bed. The spiral on my wrist now bleeding. And the reflection in the mirror across the room. Still seated. Still watching. Still smiling. I started locking all reflective surfaces away. Covering them with cloth, avoiding puddles, windows at night, even the glare from utensils. It didn't matter. They always found a way back. The reflections didn't obey physics anymore. I saw myself smiling when I wasn't, blinking when I didn't, moving when I stood still. And the worst part, I was starting to forget which version was me. Some mornings I'd wake up and see the wrong reflection. Sometimes a stranger's. Sometimes the boys. Sometimes the me who smiled too wide with eyes too dark. Sometimes I didn't see anything at all, just an empty room behind me. Quit my job. Stopped talking to friends. Unplugged everything with a screen. I wrapped my phone in foil and buried it in the backyard. But the house itself began to change. The corners stretched longer than they used to. The ceiling creaked at night like someone was walking in circles. One night I found a new door in the hallway. A door I had never seen before. It was narrow, wooden, blackened at the edges. And it had a mirror hanging on it. I didn't open it. I bolted it shut and shoved furniture in front of it. But by morning the door was gone. Only the mirror remained, hanging from the wall like it had always been there. When I looked into it I saw the mirror room again. But this time I wasn't just looking into it. I was inside it. My bedroom faded like it was being projected onto a screen. The mirror swallowed it whole. I was seated again, in the chair. And the boy was whispering in my ear. Your shift never ended. You just walked away. He pressed something into my palm. It was a pocket watch. It didn't tick. Spun backwards. And etched across the glass were the words. Keep watching. That was the new rule. Even outside the room, the contract hadn't ended. If I looked away, bad things happened. People started disappearing. The neighbor's dog vanished. Then her son. She stopped coming out of her apartment altogether. A man from down the hall was found locked in his bathroom, every mirror in his house shattered, except the one with his body in it. He wasn't reflected, just the empty room. I started seeing people walking backward in crowds. Their faces blurred, flickering, like static over flesh. Some looked like me. Others had mouths stitched shut, dragging shadows behind them like smoke. Kept watching. I tried documenting everything in a journal. But the pages rewrote themselves. The handwriting changed. The words twisted into symbols I didn't understand. Spirals. Mirrors. Mouths with no teeth. Eventually, I found one phrase repeated over and over. You were never the first. Then one night, a woman appeared in the mirror. Middle-aged, ill, crying, tied to the chair. I saw her mouth forming the words. Help me. Please help me. I reached toward the glass. She flinched, screamed. And behind her, stepping out of the shadows, was the boy. He smiled at me, waved. Then slit her throat with a shard of mirror. Blood sprayed across the glass. But none touched me. The chair was empty again, waiting. I didn't sleep after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the ticking of the backward watch. Ticking louder and louder, until I opened my eyes to find myself already in the chair again. I started losing time. I'd blink, and 3 hours would pass. I'd fall asleep and wake up in strange places. Alleyways, abandoned buildings, public bathrooms. Once, I woke up sitting at a table across from my own parents, except their eyes were black. Hello. They smiled and asked if I was finally ready to serve. Serve what? I never got an answer. Then 2 nights ago, my reflection stopped copying me entirely. It stared at me, motionless, until it slowly raised its hand and pointed to my wall, to a crack in the plaster. I pried it open. Inside, behind the insulation, was a mirror, a small round one, and inside it, a version of myself, screaming, mouth open, eyes bulging, pounding at the glass from the inside. I dropped it. It didn't break, just sank into the floor. I've come to understand something now. The mirror doesn't show the future or the past. It shows truth. And the truth is, I never left the mirror room. That day I fled. That wasn't me. It was a version made to escape, to roam free, to find more people to bring back. The real me is still in the chair, still watching, still trapped. And now I think, I'm the lure vessel. Because last night the mirror in my hallway cleared again. And this time I saw you sitting in the chair, looking confused, terrified. You saw the boy walk behind you. You turned too late. He smiled. And then you vanished, just like me. And the reflection, it's already changing. Looks like you now. And behind it, in the dark corners of the room, more chairs are being placed. More people are being found. You clicked play on this story, didn't you? That's how it starts. That's how they find you. Because the mirror only needs a glance, a flicker of attention, one moment of curiosity. And now you're watching. The pocket watch ticks louder in your mind. You'll hear it soon. You'll see the mirror next. And when you do, don't look away. The knock at the door was soft. Oh, soft. Like someone tapping with a single fingernail. I hadn't invited anyone. Hadn't ordered anything. No one visited me anymore. Not after I started acting strange. After I stopped answering messages, stopped showing up to work, stopped making sense in conversations. But the knock came again. I crept to the peephole, heart hammering. My breath caught in my throat. No one was there. Just the empty hallway. Dimly lit. Silent. But when I stepped back, there it was again. Scratch. I turned, stared at the mirror across the room. The one I'd forgotten to cover. There were fingerprints on the inside of the glass. Smudged, greasy streaks dragging downward. And behind them, a face. Not mine. A woman's. Pale sunken eyes. Mouth sewn shut. Her fingers pressed flat against the other side of the glass, like she was trying to push through. Her lips twitched, like she was trying to scream without opening her mouth. Then the glass cracked. Not a clean line, but a spiderweb fracture spreading from the center, like something had struck it from within. I threw a blanket over it, grabbed a roll of duct tape and sealed it up. It didn't help, because now every mirror showed her. Bathroom, closet door, microwave reflection, even the sheen off my kettle. Her face hovered just behind mine, always watching, always crying. And every time I blinked, she got a little closer. I tried to leave my apartment, but the hallway stretched longer than it should. Doors repeated. Lights flickered and turned red. And the walls, they began to breathe. I'm not exaggerating. They pulsed in and out like lungs. With each breath, the air got colder. A child's laughter echoed down the corridor. I turned to run back inside, but my door was gone. Just a mirror in its place. Full-length ornate thing, too clean, too new. It hadn't been there before. Gold trim, polished surface. And within it, me. But I wasn't moving. The reflection stood completely still while I panted and trembled. It tilted its head. Smile. Then it winked. I screamed and backed away, stumbling over myself. Then I felt a hand on my shoulder. Just cold fingers. I spun around. No one was there. But I could still feel them. The pressure of those fingers pressing into my skin. Slowly, deliberately. Ran. I didn't know where to. The hallway twisted like a labyrinth. I passed the same broken light bulb 3 times. A woman's voice whispered in my ear every few seconds. Too close to be real. She kept saying, "You were the last one to leave. So you'll be the first to return." Finally found a stairwell. Tore down flight after flight. When I reached the lobby, the world outside looked wrong. People were frozen mid-step. Cars sat idle with doors open. Birds hung in midair, wings outstretched but unmoving. I stepped outside. And everything shattered. Like I'd walked through a pane of glass. Suddenly I was back in the room. The mirror room. Chair. Boy. The humming light overhead. I was seated again. Strapped in. Arms bound. The boy leaned close and whispered, "You were never out. Just in a different frame." Then he turned and walked into the mirror. Vanished. I tried to scream but no sound came out. My mouth wouldn't move. Then the light above me flickered and changed shape, morphing into the shape of a face. My face. Laughing. And then the room tilted. Everything slid sideways like gravity had changed. The mirror on the wall now became the floor. And I was falling into it, being pulled by some invisible force. I hit the glass, but instead of breaking it, I passed through it like water. Into another room. Another version of the world. Copy. Twisted. Like a dream built from memories that didn't belong to me. There were people here. All sitting in chairs, staring into mirrors. Their faces were slack. Expressionless. Like mannequins. And I realized. They were all versions of me. Some older. Some younger. Some grotesquely altered. One had no eyes. One was missing a jaw. Another had wires in place of fingers, tapping endlessly on the arm of his chair. Then all at once they turned to look at me. And they spoke in unison. "Return. The shift has no end. There is only the watch." One of them reached out and pressed a cold pocket watch into my hand. It wasn't ticking. But it began to glow. Bright red. The numbers reversed. Then blinked out entirely. And suddenly I was back in my apartment. Gasping. Wetting. The duct-taped mirror had been ripped open from the inside. The glass lay shattered across the floor, and carved into the wall behind it, scrawled in blood, were the words, "You're out of time." I turned to run but stopped. Because the hallway beyond my door was filled with mirrors. Each one taller than the last. Each one showing a different scene. Hospital room. A forest at night. Burning house. A cave filled with shadows that whispered your name. And in the last one, camera. Computer screen. Sitting there. Reading this. Watching. The boy stood behind you grinning. And your reflection. Just blinked. Out of sync. Not quite right. Just like mine once did. You're already in. You just don't know it yet. I stopped checking the mirrors. But it didn't matter anymore. They started checking me. Any surface that caught a reflection. Windows, polished tiles, the side of a spoon became an eye. Watching. Waiting. Sometimes I saw a glimpse of him. Not the boy. Someone else. Wrapped in layers of black cloth like a shroud. No face. Just a smooth void like the glass itself had turned to skin. He stood in reflections where he didn't belong. Behind me in the fridge door. Beneath my feet in a puddle. On the surface of a sleeping phone. Every time I looked he got closer. And every time he vanished, I could still hear him. Whispering my name. I tried breaking all the mirrors in the apartment. It worked for a while. Until the walls began to reflect. Not perfectly but just enough. A faint shimmer like oil on water. Shapes moving that weren't mine. Things crawling just beneath the surface, leaving greasy handprints as they passed. I tried painting over them. Layers of black. But it flaked away. The apartment was changing. Rotting. The floorboards warped. Mold crept up the corners. The ceiling peeled like old wallpaper. But worst of all, time stopped. Not in the way you'd think. Clock still ticked. The sun still rose. But I wasn't moving forward. Every day I checked the date. Never changed. The food didn't spoil. My beard didn't grow. My hair didn't fall. I wasn't aging. I wasn't sleeping either. Because when I closed my eyes, I dreamed in mirrors. I'd wake up in strange places, tied to chairs, floating in black water, buried beneath piles of broken glass. The boy would be there, holding that damn pocket watch, whispering things I couldn't understand. Then one night I heard someone else whispering. A woman's voice. Familiar. My mother's. She's been dead for 10 years. But there she was, humming a lullaby she used to sing when I was small. The sound drifted in through the vents, carried on air that smelled like her perfume. Followed it. Through the apartment. Into the closet. Behind the coats and boxes and old photos. There was a mirror I'd never seen before. Oval. Cracked down the center. The frame was carved with tiny symbols, shapes that looked like eyes, mouths, and hourglasses. And inside, not just her reflection, her. Sitting in a chair in a room of darkness. He smiled softly, said my name. I've been waiting, she whispered. I reached out, touched the glass, and the world inverted. Suddenly I was standing in the room with her. No walls, no ceiling, just endless black, lit by a light that didn't cast shadows. She stood and took my hand. I'm sorry, she said, tears running down her cheeks. I tried to warn you. But the mirrors don't forget. I asked what she meant. She led me to another mirror, tall and silver, rippling like water. You were born watching, she said. You just didn't remember. That's why you were chosen. The surface changed. Showed me as a child. Sitting in my old bedroom. Staring into a mirror. But my reflection wasn't right. It blinked before I did. Moved before I did. Then the boy appeared, standing behind the child me, whispering into his ear. You were marked from the beginning, she said. Every watcher is. And every watcher must take their turn inside. She let go of my hand, and I fell. Not backward, inward. Through layers of glass, each one a different version of reality. Rooms full of screaming people, their faces stretched and twisted. Forests with trees made of bone. Cities where the sky cracked like porcelain and rained blood. Then I landed. My feet. In front of the first mirror. The one from the job. The room was empty now. Chair overturned. No boy. No humming. Just the mirror. Shimmered, showing nothing. No reflection. Just blank. And something inside it began to knock. Not like before. Faster. More desperate. It leaned close. And I saw me. But not me now. Me from yesterday. Banging on the glass. Mouth moving silently. Begging. Pleading. Behind him, the faceless man loomed. Hand on his shoulder. Dragging him back into the darkness. He was screaming. I turned to run, but there was nowhere to go. Just mirrors. Endless mirrors. And each one showed a different version of me. Screaming. Crying. Changing. Some had claws. Some had eyes stitched shut. One was just a mass of teeth and hair and fear. And one just smiled. Peaceful. He looked at me. And mouthed the words. Let go. Then stepped forward. Through the glass. And took my place. He blinked. Stretched. Cracked his neck. And grinned. I tried to fight. Tried to scream. But I couldn't move. Because now I was in the mirror. Watching him. Living my life. Free. And me. I was trapped. Again. In another frame. Another story. Another watching. Another job. The only question left is, who's watching you now? Time lost its meaning quickly. Inside the mirror, days didn't pass like they used to. There was only the hum of silence, and the sound of glass cracking somewhere far off, like ice splitting under invisible weight. I couldn't move. Not entirely. I could shift my eyes, maybe tilt my head slightly. But walking, running, screaming, those things belonged to the body I no longer had. The worst part was watching him. The version of me that stepped through. He took over my life effortlessly. He acted like me, talked like me. He knew the stories I told, the people I loved. But there was something off about him. A stiffness in his movements. A strange delay, like every thought took a little longer to arrive. A glitch in a program that no one could quite detect. Except for one person, Elena. My sister. She hadn't seen me in a year, maybe longer. We weren't exactly close after the funeral, but I saw her face on the screen when he called her. That flicker of doubt. The way her brow furrowed. She said, "You okay? You sound different." He smiled and said, "Just tired." But she kept staring. That gave me hope. 'Cause maybe, just maybe, someone would notice I was gone. The glass around me wasn't just showing my life. It was showing other mirrors. Dozens of them, flickering in and out like a TV stuck between channels. Some looked into rooms I didn't recognize. Some showed faces I'd never seen. But some showed other people like me. Trapped. Their eyes wide with terror. Some were pounding against the inside. Others sat motionless like statues. One of them noticed me. Her head tilted at the same angle as mine. A tear rolled down her cheek, but her face didn't move. She mouthed the word "how." I didn't have an answer. I wanted to scream, shout, to warn everyone that mirrors are not what they seem, that they're hungry. But that's when something changed. The boy returned. Only now he was inside the mirror with me. He appeared from the shadows like smoke curling in reverse. His pocket watch spinning madly in his hand. The second he looked at me, everything around us stilled. Even the flickering reflections froze. He walked up to me and whispered, "You shouldn't have watched so long." I wanted to ask him who he was, what this was, but all I could do was blink slowly. So he told me anyway. "You were chosen," he said. "They always choose the watchers. The quiet ones. The curious ones." He held up the pocket watch. Time stopped. No reversed. Scenes spiraled backward through the glass. My first day on the job. My old apartment. My childhood bedroom. I was watching myself grow younger, shrinking until I was 6, sitting cross-legged in front of a mirror. The boy leaned close to my younger self and whispered into his ear. "Someday you'll look too long," he said. The boy turned to me and smiled. "And you did." I tried to reach for him, to strangle him, to tear his face off and scream, but I couldn't move. My rage just echoed silently through the layers of glass. Then he was gone, and something worse took his place. A door appeared in the mirror behind me. A real, solid door. Rotted wood, rusted hinges, and a keyhole that oozed black fluid. I had never seen this door before, but I felt it in my bones. Had always been there. It had always been waiting. And it had started to open. I didn't want it to. But the closer it creaked open, the more my limbs began to move. Slowly at first. Twitch in my fingers. A shift in my shoulders. Movement returned to my body like blood thawing after frostbite. I stepped backward, away from the door. But the reflection around me rippled. The mirrors showed dozens of other versions of myself being pulled toward identical doors. Each of them tried to resist. None succeeded. Something lived behind that door. Something that wanted us all. The boy had been a messenger. The mirror wasn't a prison. It was a lobby. And now it was my turn to go in. I tried one last desperate thing. In my pocket I found it. A shard of the original mirror. Somehow, impossibly, it had stayed with me. It was cold and pulsing like a piece of frozen heart. I turned it toward the reflection behind me, into the frame of the mirror I was now trapped in, and jammed it into the edge. The mirror cracked. Freeware. The glass around me spider-webbed like lightning. A scream rose. Not from me, but from the mirrors themselves. They howled like wounded animals. And then, they shattered. Fell. Not into the blackness. Not into another world. But straight into my own bedroom. Gasping. Wetting. Alive. I sat up in bed, hands shaking, the sheets damp beneath me. Was it a dream? Had it all been in my head? I rushed to the bathroom. Looked into the mirror. It was just me. No flickering. No boy. No faceless man. I laughed. Nearly cried. Until I saw the corner of the mirror. A tiny hairline crack. Just big enough for something to peek through. And then I saw the door again. Reflected in my pupils. Still open. Still waiting. The crack in the mirror grew overnight. I didn't touch it. I swear I didn't even breathe near it. But by morning, the hairline fracture that barely curled along the corner had stretched like a spider's leg, reaching toward the center of the glass. It pulsed faintly, almost imperceptibly, like it was alive, like it was listening. I covered the mirror with a sheet. Tried to ignore it. But mirrors are never really gone. They're everywhere. In screens, in windows, in the glossy surface of a coffee table. You start to notice them when you're afraid of them. Every reflective surface feels like an eye. Watching. Waiting. Smiling with teeth you can't quite see. I tried to go back to my life. Tried to work. Tried to eat. But the world had changed. Or maybe I had. I kept catching glimpses of things in reflections. Flickers of movement when there shouldn't have been any. Once, while walking past a storefront window, I saw myself standing still inside it, not matching my steps. He smiled at me with eyes like oil, black and bottomless. When I turned to look directly, the window was empty. And every night I dreamed of the door. The one inside the mirror. The one that cracked open in that place. It was wider now. I could see more through it. A staircase descending into nothing. Walls that pulsed like flesh. And at the bottom a hand, long and thin, with too many fingers, slowly beckoning. I didn't want to go back. But I had a feeling I didn't have a choice. Then, 3 nights ago, I heard a sound coming from the bathroom. It was subtle at first, like someone breathing through a wet cloth. Then came the tapping. 1, 2, 3 gentle raps on the mirror like knuckles made of bone. I stood outside the door, holding my breath, staring at the handle as it turned by itself. I should have run. But I opened the door. The sheet I'd used to cover the mirror was on the floor. The mirror itself was fogged up from the inside. And something had written in the condensation. "You came back too soon." The letters melted down the glass like tears. I stumbled back, heart hammering, and ran to the hallway, only to freeze in place. Because every mirror in the house was uncovered. Even ones I swore I'd stored away. They were all out now. All turned toward me. And in every one, I wasn't looking back. He was. The other me. Grinning. Mouth slightly open, as if mid-whisper. I smashed the bathroom mirror first. Then the ones in the hall. The one above the fireplace. The one on the bedroom closet door. Glass rained like ice. I thought it was over. But mirrors don't just break. They bleed. That night, I found a cut on my palm. A thin line like a mirror's edge had licked it open. I didn't remember injuring myself. Then another appeared. On my arm. My back. My neck. Each one shallow. Each one in the exact place I had seen on him. Like we were sinking again. Becoming the same. I called Elena. I needed someone to see me. To tell me I was real. I begged her to come over. When she arrived, she looked at me with that same furrowed brow. "Are you okay? You look pale. And your eyes. What about them?" I asked. "They're darker." We sat down. I told her everything. She didn't laugh. She didn't brush me off. She sat silently listening until I was done. Then she said, "Do you remember when we were kids? You used to talk to the mirror in your room." Froze. "No, I didn't." "You did," she insisted. "You said there was a boy in there. With a watch. You said he would ask you riddles. And if you answered wrong, he'd take something from you. First it was your toy, then your voice. Then one night you stopped speaking completely. For almost a week." I stared at her, speechless. "I thought it was just kid stuff," she said. "But now I'm not sure." I didn't know what scared me more. The fact that it happened and I forgot, or that he had always been with me. That this wasn't new. Elena stayed the night. In the middle of it, I woke up to find her standing in front of the hallway mirror, unmoving. "Elena," I whispered. She didn't respond. I approached slowly, my breath caught in my throat. Her eyes were open but glassy, fixed on her reflection. Tears ran down her cheeks, but she didn't blink. I reached out to touch her shoulder and he screamed, spun around. Her hands flew to her face like she didn't recognize me. "I saw something," she cried. "It wasn't me. It looked like me but it was smiling. And then it whispered something I can't remember. She wouldn't go near another mirror after that. And I realized the truth. This wasn't just about me anymore. They were spreading. Every reflection was a gateway. Every mirror a crack in the skin of reality. And that door. It wasn't behind me anymore. It was inside me. I see it now every time I close my eyes. Each time a little closer. Each time a little wider. Whatever is waiting behind it. It's learning how to step through. Started with a job. Simple task. Watch the mirror. But the mirror watched back. And now it wants out. I don't know how much longer I have. Each day feels heavier, like gravity itself is dragging me closer to that door inside my mind. I try to resist, but the pull is relentless, like a tide I cannot swim against. My reflection watches me with that same eerie smile, the one that makes my skin crawl, as if it's daring me to give up and step through. Last night, I dreamt I was standing before the door again. It was wider now, stretching beyond the edges of the mirror's frame, oozing a darkness so thick it swallowed the light. The hand was there, but this time it reached out and grabbed mine. Cold as ice, its fingers squeezed, and I felt myself slipping. I woke choking, sweat soaking my sheets, heart pounding like a drum in my ears. Today I went to Elena's house. She was the only person left I could trust. When I arrived, the air felt wrong, heavy, suffocating. The mirrors in her home were all turned away from the rooms they once reflected, like they knew what was coming. I noticed a faint crack forming in the bathroom mirror, thin and subtle but unmistakable. "Elena," I whispered, voice trembling. "It's spreading." She looked at me, eyes wide with fear. "I saw it too," she said. "Last night I caught a glimpse of something behind me in the reflection. It wasn't me." We sat together, huddled in the dim light. I told her about the boy, the watch, the endless doors and mirrors, the watchers trapped inside. She listened quietly, her face pale. "Do you think it's too late?" she asked. I swallowed hard. "I don't know. But I'm going back. Have to. If I don't stop it here, it'll keep spreading. We'll all be trapped." With her help I prepared. Salt lines around the mirrors, herbs to ward off shadows, anything I could find that might buy me time. I stood before the cracked mirror in my apartment, heart hammering in my chest. The door was open. The hand beckoned. I took a deep breath and stepped through. The world flipped. Cold darkness swallowed me whole. Inside, I was surrounded by a forest of mirrors, endless and stretching into infinity. Faces stared back at me. Faces I knew, faces I didn't. They begged silently, eyes full of desperation. Then I saw him, the boy with the watch. He smiled that terrible smile and said, "Welcome home." I clenched my fists, ready to fight. Because this time I wasn't going to watch. I was going to break free. And if I failed, at least I would take the mirror with me. Because some reflections shouldn't live to see the light. Some doors should stay closed forever. The mirror cracked. The world shook. And I screamed. End.